Hello nerds! Thank you for watching Generally Nerdy. This is Renaissance Nerd. This is a new series that I'm trying out. To start off, it's going to be just cooking stuff. We're going to do one video for Renaissance Nerd a week. So for the cooking parts, it's going to be based around one meal. So the first video will be a side dish. The second video will be a prep for the entree. The third video will be the entree. And then the fourth video will be how to use that dish as leftovers so that you can maximize and not throw away food, and then you don't have to spend a bunch of money going out to eat because you can make some really delicious stuff at home. Eventually, I want to get this series into more aspects of everyday nerd life. Right now, we're just gonna nerd out on food, and who doesn't like to eat, right? Everybody has to eat, so you kinda gotta like it. This video is going to be the prep for the entree, so it'll be really quick. Mostly, I'm just showing you some real easy ways to chop up your vegetables. We're gonna build a mirepoix, and I'm gonna show you some peeling techniques that are gonna help you speed up your peeling when you have to peel potatoes or carrots or any other root style vegetables. First on the list of prep is potatoes. Potatoes is kind of the key thing for shepherd's pie, so you're gonna need to know how to do potatoes. What we're gonna do is we're gonna wash these guys off, because if you'll notice, you can't really see it there, it's in the light. Dirt. Don't you just love eating dirt? Yeah, nobody does. So we're gonna clean them off. We're gonna clean them, we're gonna peel them. You can leave the skins on. It's technically more healthy if you leave the skins on, but I am not making for myself. I am also making for my girlfriend, and she's not a fan of skins in her mash, so we're gonna skin them.
Unless they're red.
Unless they're red potatoes, yes. So we're gonna peel these potatoes. We're gonna peel some carrots. We're also going to small dice up our mirepoix. Mirepoix is carrots, onions, and celery. Also referred to as the Holy Trinity, or the French Holy Trinity to be a little bit more specific, because the Cajun or Creole Holy Trinity is a little different. We'll get to that in a different video. Also in Italian cooking, it's the same three vegetables. Your ratios change slightly, but it's referred to as sofrito. So a proper mirepoix, and we're not gonna do a proper ratio mirepoix, and I'll explain why when we get to that point, but a proper mirepoix is 2 parts onion to 1 part carrots to 1 part celery. So altogether, if your part starts off as a cup, so let's say you have 2 cups of onion, then you would need 1 cup carrots, 1 cup celery. We're gonna do a little more straight across the board because, like I said, we're not building this properly, and there's a reason for it.
Okay, first, like I said a minute ago, we are doing the potatoes, and you want to make sure you get as much of the dirt off of these bad boys as possible. Since in this instance we are peeling them, it is less important, but still, I mean, nobody wants to eat dirt, so the only way to be sure that you don't have them in there is to make sure it's all off to begin with. Also, at this process, you are, if your potatoes have started to grow eyes, then you are getting rid of all of those eyes. I have read that the eye is what is indicative of the potato becoming poisonous or hazardous in some way. I have never had experience with that. At all of the restaurants I've ever worked at, occasionally the potatoes will start growing eyes. You just pluck them off, and the eyes themselves, yes, those are very bad. You do not want to eat the eyes. However, just because an eye has started growing doesn't mean the potato has gone bad necessarily. If the potato is soft and not as hard as it was when you first got it, then yes, that is a good indication the potato has started going bad. The only real way to know, though, aside from the softness, is when you cut it open, which we will do later, if it is discolored inside, sometimes they will have holes in them. Those are bad sections of the potato. You want to get rid of that because that is not edible. Something that can make this process go faster, this washing of the potatoes process go faster. Oh, and see here I'm showing... What am I showing? I'm showing the eyes. There they are. See, those are little tiny eyes. Those are acceptable. Yeah, I mean, if it's growing, if you have another freaking potato growing off the side of that thing, then yeah, that's probably a good indication they're not good anymore. But just pluck them off like I did right there in the blurry photo, and you're good to go. But something to make this process go a little bit faster is if you have a vegetable brush. I do not have a vegetable brush. Most restaurants I've worked in, we never had vegetable brushes at our disposal, so that is not a luxury that a lot of people have. And here we are going to start peeling the potatoes. Now be very careful, that is a blade on the peeler. I've done this once or twice, so I'm pretty quick at it. This speed here is not necessary. Be cautious of that blade. You must always respect the blade in your hand. Notice that for the most part I am peeling away from myself. The bits at the beginning, when it's the large chunks, you go a little bit slower, and I go a little bit slower, and I'm also not really peeling into my hand. If you can notice, see, that's a different angle. See how I'm rotating with my fingers? It helps with the speed. But then when we get back to this angle, on those big slices, I'm angling my wrist so that I am not going to go into my arm, because that's something a lot of people will do, is they'll get overzealous with that peeler, and they'll cut themselves because they go right into their arm. And now we're going to speed it up. These small guys you want to go really slow with, because they're much smaller. You do run a bigger chance of cutting yourself if you are not careful with these small potatoes. But the same basic idea applies. Get the majority off and then go around the top and bottom. And you will often see bits at the tops and bottoms right here. Like it's good, kind of goes real fast here, but you'll see those sour bits like that. You can just peel that until that sour bit is gone, and then your potato is totally acceptable. You'll find the eyes like that oftentimes in the body of the potato, which makes it a little bit more difficult, but most peelers have an eye gouger thing. On my widthwise peeler that I prefer to use, the eye gouger is along the side. You can notice it's that longer side of the prong. But even the lengthwise peelers have it at the tip of the peeler itself.
Now, one thing you're going to notice is my kitchen is very, very small. And that's kind of why, one of the things anyway, why I wanted to make these videos, is because people always say, oh, I have a really crap kitchen, or my utensils aren't very good, it's too hard to cook. It's really easy to cook, and you don't need a whole lot of room. Granted, I would like more room in my kitchen, but like just with the two lights that I have, this one you see behind me and the one that's lighting my face right now, these two lights and this camera on a tripod, I can barely move. Like I have to move the lights or the camera or some combination thereof in order to get to each of these shots. So saying your kitchen is too small is not an excuse. So that being said, because I have all of my ingredients out on the counter, I don't have a whole lot of room for this portion of the prep. The other portions of prep I actually filmed last night so that I could be prepared for this, so that it wouldn't take me all night to make dinner. But So because I have no room over there, we're actually going to be setting up our cutting board right here on the, and you'll see it in just a second. It's on the stovetop. Stovetop's not on, but it works, and I'll show you how to make it work.
So to make it work, you just wrap a towel around it to even out that length, or to even out the space between the actual surface and the board. And then, voila. For a regular countertop flat surface, you can put a towel underneath that to help it keep it from slipping. Just get the towel a little wet, and it will help keep it from sliding around underneath you. Here we are slicing these potatoes in such a way so as to make them fairly uniform, and we also are trying to maximize the amount of surface area that we have in order to make sure they cook evenly. You don't want to get super uneven cooking, just because that tends to make your potatoes a little bit more starchy. Though for this purpose, if you do overcook your potatoes and they are a little bit starchy, that's totally fine. That will actually help them set up a little bit better in the leftovers process. And then that little guy right there, I just cut in half. I didn't take the extra bits off of because it was really tiny, so it was already about the same size. Like I said, we're going for even. We don't each potato doesn't get the exact same amount of cuts because each potato is not the exact same size. And we are putting them directly into water. So with the root vegetables, the other vegetables, I say it later in the video that you can prep these up a day or two before. Actually, any of these vegetables you can really prep up approximately about 5 days or more. Potatoes specifically are about 5 days in advance that you can do. But once you peel a potato, it does start to oxidize. So as a way to combat that oxidization, you want to make sure that you put them into water, because if they're in water, then they're not exposed to as much oxygen, and they oxidize much, much slower. And then along the lines of uniform size, this potato was really big, so we cut it an extra time so as to make, again, even sizing on those cuts. And again, really large ones, so we do an extra cut just so that they are all approximately the same size. Right into the water, and then we get to season the water. First up, we do some salt. I'm not going to tell you what the brand is because I am not getting paid to tell you those brands. I actually just get whatever's cheapest. Salt is salt. Ionized, I prefer kosher for most cooking applications, though ionized table salt is a nutritional necessity from time to time, so don't count out ionized table salt. But for most cooking applications, I do use kosher salt. This is some granulated garlic. Never mind that logo right there because it is, I mean, whatever.
So that's it for your potatoes. Those are in the water boiling. Now we can jump over to the mirepoix veg. Remember, that's onions, carrots, and celery. We're not building a proper mirepoix, but those are the elements of a mirepoix. We're going to be doing a small-ish dice. It's not a proper small dice. It's not what they teach you in culinary school, but it's close. And it's, for our purposes, it's not like we're presenting to the Queen of England or anything like that. Nobody's going to be measuring to make sure that your cuts are 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch for a small dice. So let's get over to that. One thing to keep in mind though, a lot of this prep, a lot of the stuff for the prep video, we can do the night before. You can actually do for your veggies, you can really prep them up and then just have them in the fridge for when you cook. So say you don't have anything to do on Tuesday afternoon, you can chop up some vegetables and they'll be ready as ingredients for whenever you're ready to cook. So this is something you can do for that. And then we're going to jump into seasoning the meat.
Alright, so this is an onion. You'll also notice in these videos, I am using not my professional kitchen knives. I am using just my house knives. This knife actually specifically right here is an IKEA knife. So what I just did is I cut off the top there, and then I sliced it in half. Notice the root veg, or the root side of the onion is still intact. Now, once we have that, we can peel the outer layers because there's very little flavor in those outer layers. And you can tell because they're the ones that are mostly discolored, as I'm showing you there. And they should peel off relatively easily. Depending on the type of onion, I usually have more issue peeling red onions, though red onions are my second favorite breed of onion. I do like me some red onions. They tend to be a little bit more sweet, not as high in umami though, which is whatever. So if you were in culinary school, they would tell you to cut this way first. See how that would be your first cuts into that onion. That's unnecessary. What we're going to do is what's called a rainbow cut. This would be your second cut on an onion. And notice I'm demonstrating here the idea. You want to go around the center and heading in towards the center with each cut. So just like this, I demonstrate now. Again, you do have a knife in your hands, so be aware that it is a sharp utensil and you could cut yourself. So caution is key. I have done this a number of times. I have been cooking in kitchens for close to 20 years at this point, so I've done it a few times. I can go a little fast. If you are not comfortable, then go slow. Notice also I didn't take that extra skin off, and now it is usable as a handle. And the other thing to notice about this is I am curling the fingers of my guide hand, so my subdominant hand, my left hand, if you will. That way, I don't cut myself. When we get to the celery, I will show you a little bit of a more illustrative example of how that works. But you do always want to keep those fingers curled. And see, we didn't have to do those first initial cuts going in towards the roots because that is a beautiful small dice right there. Now, we do still have a little bit of heart, and there is some usable onion meat around it. That's what I'm showing you here. So what you want to do is take another little slice, and occasionally you will run into larger pieces that, for whatever reason, just didn't end up. That's what I just set aside there. And all I have to do is chop, chop, chop. Again, bend away those fingertips so that you do not chop them off. I have done that a few times in my life. And then what is left of the onion, is trash. You can just get rid of it. And then this, like I said, every now and then you will have these larger pieces. They happen. Just process it just like you would the rest of the onion. Take it one way so that you've got long strips, and then take it the other way so that you've got a good dice. And that is the basics on how to chop an onion, how to dice an onion more specifically. Never want to do it in a food processor because the process of doing that in a food processor, it beats up the onion. And again, we're going to go a little bit faster on this second half of the onion. So the food processor will shred that onion, and the chemical in the onion that makes you cry also makes the onion more bitter. And traditionally, a food processor or a blender, that blade in there is much more dull than a house knife. So because it's more dull, it makes that chemical more prevalent because you burst the capsules that hold it inside the onion. All right, so here, these are the two different kinds of peelers you can use. That if you choose a more traditional peeler, that's the vertical peeler as I call it, then you always want to put the tip of the carrot onto your cutting board, and see, it goes pretty fast. I don't like that one as much. I feel like I can go faster with a horizontal peeler. And again, you want to put the tip on the cutting board so that you have something to brace against, and that helps with your speed. Even when you flip it around to do the other side, tip on the cutting board. Anyway, the onions, there's the capsules inside the meat of the onion that hold that chemical at the microscopic level. If you have a dull blade, then that shreds through those capsules, and that chemical is released in larger amounts. If you have a sharper blade, then you will avoid tearing apart those capsules. And therefore your onions will be less bitter, and you will cry less when you are cutting them. So sharper blade, the better. In this carrots right here, if you notice, I'm going in those big long strokes so that we get the big long leftover bits. And now we're taking off the ends. You want to take off top and bottom. The ends and the shredding you can use for stock, and we will talk about stock in a later video. You can also technically use the hearts of the onions. If you wanted to use the skins of the onions, that is doable, though that does significantly change the flavor of your stock. So that is a personal choice, up to you. And now, with our carrots, we want to small dice them. How do we small dice them from that state? Well, you want to first notice that the carrot is kind of two different sizes, one at the base and one at the tip. So we want to separate those two sizes because, and I apologize, my other camera angle kind of didn't work out like I wanted it to, so technical difficulties have made this part a little bit more difficult. But notice we're going to process the tip and the base a little bit differently. The tip we only take in half and then take in half again, so we have 4. That is what's called a bâtonnet. That is carrot sticks right there. So if you have kids, that's how you make them carrot sticks, is you just bâtonnet your carrots. So now we take that bâtonnet and then just dice. And again, my fingers are curled. You can't really tell in this camera angle, and I apologize one more time just because this camera angle is less than ideal. But you can still see I'm curling those fingertips away from the blade so that if anything touches that blade on my left hand, it will be my knuckle, which is away from the sharp part of the blade. And once you get to the very end bits, I slow down significantly, because that is a good way to cut yourself, is if you continue to go fast when you are unsure. And since I was working around cameras, I was a little unsure of my right and left hand cooperating properly. Since this is a smaller-ish carrot, then we are only taking it in half, and then we're taking those halves into thirds, which gives us 6 pieces on the base. That larger one to the left we will cut an extra time, and we will go over that once we get to that point. So here is the larger one. Take it in half just like we did the last one. Take the tip in half. And we can take, since it is so large, we can take the tip into 6 pieces instead of 4. And again, we're trying for a relatively uniform size on all of these, which is why we're giving it these extra cuts. And then that base we can take into thirds. So take off one side, flip it over, take off the other side, which gives us 3 pieces. And then those 3 pieces we turn into 3 pieces again, which gives us 9 bâtonnets. And then take them in chunks that you're comfortable cutting. You don't have to cut all 9 at once. You don't have to even cut half at once. You can do 2 sticks at a time. Just make sure you are being careful with that blade. One last time with our third carrot, basically the same as the first. And this is actually slightly more carrot than we needed. Just my general recipe calls for 3 large carrots, so we are cutting 3 large carrots. And now we're into celery. And this time the second angle did work. Notice, and so what I'm doing off camera right here is I'm just pulling these stalks off of the whole base of celery. And always, like 98% of the time, because occasionally you'll see it without this much dirt, but it's always dirty. So 98% of the time, though, you're going to visibly see all of that dirt. And I'm just demonstrating how dirty they can be. You want to wash that off. We are not going to be using that white bit necessarily, but we will be cutting into that a little bit, so we want to make sure it's as clean as possible. Again, I don't have a veggie scrubber, so I don't get it perfect, but we are also, again, not going to be using all of that white bit. See, we are cutting off the tips now, just like we did with the carrots. And again, these tips can be used in stock, though if you do have a little bit of dirt left on your tips, when you do that stock, you will want to strain it through like a cheesecloth or something, some very fine mesh. And celery is slightly different when we are turning it into a bâtonnet. Celery is, for some intents and purposes, like we can take it and slice right along, just like I'm doing here. Just turn it into strips. Don't necessarily have to cut it in half first, because you're just stripping it out. Now, you can also go down the center first and turn 2 pieces, and then turn those 2 pieces into 2 more pieces, so you end up with 4 sticks, and it'll be the same end result. It's just a matter of style, whichever way you want to do it. And then we have our sliced carrot, or our sliced celery. Now, just like we did with the bâtonnet carrots, and again, you can make these into sticks. All you would have to do is cut them larger, but we are dicing, so we are going to chop them relatively fine at this point. And notice my left hand is curling those fingers back. As the blade gets closer, my left hand moves back. It is simply there to maintain control of what I am cutting, so that the cut doesn't get away from me. And slowing down as we get towards the end, because we don't want to chop our fingertips off. Going much faster this time. Oh wait, that's the beauties of editing post, right? I'm going to show you here the reason we curl our fingertips right here, because if I'm touching with my knuckles, I'm not going to cut my fingers. It is physically impossible to cut my fingers if they are curled and I'm rubbing knuckles. And now we're into beef. So you can use whatever ground beef you want. I prefer to use like 90-10 or 85-15. We're seasoning it with some Worcestershire, a little bit of salt and pepper. There's the salt again. Again, not a sponsor, just the best picture of salt I could find. So a little bit of salt and pepper, some Worcestershire, and garlic, granulated garlic, just like we did to begin with the potatoes. And that is basically your prep video, guys.
And that, guys, is the prep for Shepherd Booth's pie. Next week, we're going to get into the entree, so come on back. Don't forget, you can find the full recipe over on the Patreon site, patreon.com/generallynerdy, or you can see the basic instructions down in the video description, or over on the website for free, also down in the video description. You can find basic instructions there as well. The website is generallynerdy.net. Also, up on the website, you can find the links to the store, you can find the social media links, everything that is involved as such is all up there on the website, so go check it out, generallynerdy.net. But before you go looking for all of the things, definitely click the subscribe button if you're brand new here to Generally Nerdy, or if you like this episode, make sure you click that like button. For other videos that might interest you, definitely check out one of these boxes right here to the left of my face. But before you go, always remember, if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here, and now we're gonna make some delicious food.